And I'm live. Alrighty, first things first, I am going to connect the chat to the stream. I'm going to do it. I pop out the chat, and then I take this. I figured it out. Alrighty, and then I go to YouTube chat here, and boom. Haha! I have done it. Look at me. And now I can have my chat on here. Excellent. 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 Alrighty. Alrighty. Getting this all set up here. I've got my chat all good to go. I have everything I could ever want or need right here, right now, with all of you lovely people. Thank you so much for stopping by. Alrighty. Well, next thing I need to do is I need to self-advertise. I need to start selling myself here. So by that, I'm gonna go ahead and live now. I'm gonna sell myself here. I'm gonna sell myself here. And I don't want to advertise. I don't want to self-advertise in places I don't want to be in. Nuisance. There's only so many things you can go about self-advertising yourself about. So I'm gonna give it a minute, and then I'll start diving into everything that's going on. But if any of you have any burning questions, feel free to ask away right now, as I am warming up the streaming engine, as it were. And time to check the stream integrity here. Okay, the stream integrity is good. That is very good to hear. Very good. Well, not here, I guess. See. Alrighty. Really curious what's the news about Strahd. Well, you'll be in for quite a treat then. Alrighty. One more minute, and then I'll start diving into the Strixhaven, then go to the shorts, and then Strahd, and then all fun jazz. Because I do, in fact, have some fun things to talk about Strahd. Greetings, monkey. Greetings. I put some questions in the Discord. I'll be sure to get to those after all these fun, juicy announcements. And then I'll be talking for a bit of time. I don't know how many commitments I have later today, but I could probably be streaming for quite a while. Yo, Trevor, can I play as that owl next campaign, LMAO? Absolutely. Not this owl in particular. You're not allowed to play that one particular owl, but you can play an owl in. That owl is special. You're not allowed to be that one owl. But you can play an owl person, for sure. Alrighty. So without further ado, as they say, I guess. So, first things first, I want to talk about Strixhaven. Strixhaven is coming out tomorrow, and in fact, tomorrow I'll be having a live stream where I'll be talking about the in-depth mechanics of the book, about what it's introducing, about the adventure itself, about a whole bunch of fun jazz. This book, funnily enough for me in particular, has been a very strange thing because I've made 2 videos on this book, and those videos have been some of the most polarizing videos on my channel. The first one was covering a lot of the hate that was going toward the concept of this book, which was months ago. And then just recently, I put out a video on the Silvery Barbs spell, and that one got a lot of flack as well. So this book is very polarizing. And before I go into, how's the adventure and all that stuff, I want to say that this book, I do think, is going to be the catalyst for people's perception of running 5th edition. So right there in the beginning of 5th edition, we had exactly the player's handbook, and then eventually we got the DMG, and then end of story. So there wasn't anything really to go off on. And then slowly over time, we started getting more books. We got these adventure modules, and then we got Xanathar's Guide, right there behind me. And then we got before even the Xanathar's Guide, we got the Elemental Guide. And then we got more and more things, and eventually we got Tasha's. And I feel like this book is the book that is the catalyst for people saying, hey, I want to run a different game. I think that this book is definitely really showing off how D&D is not this one monolithic experience. D&D is ran so many different ways by so many different people, and some people do not like the aspects that come from this book. And of course, the Silvery Bar spell is just one aspect of it, but there's also the background features of Strixhaven, which are very powerful, and then there's the concept of, okay, what sort of feats do we give our players, and what options do we give our players? If you look at 2nd edition D&D, right there in the beginning, it was the same as 5th edition. Right there in the beginning of 2nd edition, there was exactly the one book, and everyone ran it the same one way, except for everyone that homebrewed their own game, of course. But then over time, it expanded out to being, oh my goodness, there's now 10 books based on, making characters, and now there's like 5 different DM books that introduce different options. And, oh, by the way, there is a dozen different campaign settings. So then eventually, over the course of 2nd edition's lifespan, the game became so different. It was not a universal one experience of everyone playing the same game. And I think that we're in that transitionary period in 5th edition right now. And I know it's going to be tough for a lot of people who are sitting there saying, oh, I'm used to running the game this one way, and now they're introducing these new concepts. But I think it's important to realize that you just need to find the right group that's right for you. You need to run a certain kind of game your way, and you need to attract people to that kind of style of play. So, Strixhaven itself, even though the book hasn't even come out yet, I think that this is the absolute catalyst. This is the, not necessarily breaking point, but this is the step forward in our gaming evolution of 5th edition. Funnily enough, evolution, that's sort of the code name for 5.5 is D&D's next evolution. So that's what's going on with Strixhaven. How's the adventure? I don't know yet, but I'm going to be running that as soon as it comes out. And funnily enough, I'm going to be running it as a full-blown Wizards-only campaign, so that's going to be a ton of fun. Oops, all Wizards group. That'll be a ton of fun. What we do know about the adventure is that it's basically 4 somewhat mini-ish adventures that can be strapped together. And in those mini-adventures, there's a whole bunch of other mini things going on, like you're taking quests, and you're getting into relationships with the other NPCs, and doing a whole bunch of various things. So it's not trying to break the bank, as it were. It's not trying to, break the mold of an adventure. But what I do think it is I think it's a great way to introduce new worlds, because previously, when we got all the other module settings, we got these tiny little adventures that basically were just, hey, here's this one little adventure you can run. I think that Strixhaven's probably putting it in a better direction of having a much grander adventure to kind of spark your imagination. How's the setting? So Magic the Gathering is certainly a polarizing setting for a lot of people, but I think, quite frankly, you can run this and Magic doesn't even bleed through if you don't want it to. If I ran this for people that don't know Magic the Gathering, they're not going to know it's Magic the Gathering, right? Because it's all about dealing with a Harry Potter college school and, just dealing with all the fun shenanigans therein. So Magic doesn't need to bleed through. And that's what I think I like about Strixhaven's setting in particular, is that you can lean in toward the Magic style if you have people that are super fans of Magic the Gathering. Or more importantly, you can easily just lean outside of that, and it works perfectly fine. And I think very important here is, does it belong in other games? As mentioned before, the spells that are coming out are pretty strong. The feats are coming out that are pretty strong. And I think that this one in particular is one of those things where it probably doesn't belong in the generic 5e realm of features and abilities and traits and all that fun jazz. But I think it fits extremely well in this setting because it is a magical setting. Especially if you're running a wizard-only group, I think it's hilarious. So that's what's going on with Strixhaven. Let me catch up on chat. Do you agree with the Harry Potter comparisons? So, I mean, J.K. Rowling did not come up with a magic school. She was not the first person to ever write that down. So, in essence, if you really want to like break it down minutia style, you could say that, you know, comparing something to Harry Potter is, you know, you can compare it to something else. That being said, though, I certainly think that, you know, from here on in, forever and all the time, everyone's always going to compare any sort of magical school to Harry Potter. What I like about Strixhaven over Harry Potter is the issue with Harry Potter is you are dealing with kids. And that's fine, especially if you are running for kids. You know, running on those themes is super easy and simple. But when I'm running for adults, I want to lean in on adult content. And you can't lean in on adult content when you're running a setting for kids, essentially. And that's what I like about Strixhaven. Strixhaven is straight up a college of old people. And thus, you can easily fit in the fun adult tropes. You can have, you know, all the drinking and all the relationships and all the, you know, all the swearing and, you know, whatever else that the adults get up to that you can't have with kids. So I understand why there's those comparisons, but I think it's fine, right? I think that you don't need to worry about that too much. Like the Winterhold in Skyrim, yeah, Winterhold in Skyrim. You know, another example of a magic school. You know, it's once again, J.K. Rowling did not invent magic schools. That's been in textbooks for a while now. I think that there's been some writings about that for like 100 years at this point of magic schools or whatever. It's just that Harry Potter was, of course, the most popular one. And because, of course, we also get the visual representation in the movies. You know, that really helps us out because books are good, but movies and specifically like art depicting that stuff really helps out. Do you think the players should be from the same school or different schools? So, what I think is if you have everyone be in the same school, it makes life simple. But at the same time, I know that there's going to be a lot of people that want to roll up characters that have differing ideas and opinions. And you can have a lot of nuance if the players are from different schools. So, for example, you know, once again, comparing to Harry Potter, we have Harry Potter's hanging out with Ron and Hermione the whole series. They're all part of the same class. What if instead Harry Potter was about Harry being in one school and then him hanging out with Hermione, who was in a different school, and then Ron in another one? It would have had different social dynamics because, yeah, everybody would have their friends from their respective school, and that makes sense, or class, or, you know, whatever you want to call it. But it also makes sense that, you know, organically, people would be dear friends with people outside of your particular little group there. So I think that you can run it either way. And most important of all is you simply just hand wave everything. It's like, okay, you know, class is over, and then you meet up with your friends or do whatever. One thing that I'm going to be strongly recommending, I'll be making videos about, is one thing I strongly recommend is having a sorting hat for the game. And what do I mean by sorting hat? Once again, you know, Harry Potter, rife, gonna be nonstop comparing it. Have a questionnaire of topics and ideas and discussions about the character before they go to school. Have like scenarios that say, hey, you know, so-and-so trips in front of you. What do you do? Do you help them out? Do you go get a teacher? Do you do this? Do you do that? And then, you know, another question of, hey, you have, you know, you see someone getting bullied. What do you do? Do you do this? Do you do that? And then basically that questionnaire is going to determine what school you go to. And I think if you do that for each person, you have a one-on-one session with someone, and then they all line up in the same school, I think that's awesome. So I definitely am going to be making videos about that, and I definitely recommend it. Oh my goodness. Fry minis just got here. How much cheese should I eat today? You should eat... What I would recommend is don't eat cheese plain whole. I would recommend a nice little charcuterie board that is filled with delightful different assortments of crackers, cheese, and if you're feeling a little frisky, maybe a little Merlot or Cab on the side. Thank you, Fry Minis, for the $2. Once again, donating to the Chair Foundation. Thank you so very much. I pre-bought the book, and I'll be here soon tomorrow, maybe. After I bought the book, I saw the adventure on DDB, and I kind of felt weird about it. I'm not sure how I feel, but I hope it's not like the DDB adventure. Yeah. Goblet of Fire displays of the schools. Yeah, for sure. Goblet of Fire is... Well, what we're talking about in particular, we're talking about the different houses, I guess. Because in Strixhaven, they are called schools, but... comparing it to Harry Potter, they would be houses. Would it be possible for me to roll my Curse of Strahd campaign into Strixhaven or just start over? Anything's possible with Curse of Strahd because you can just simply say the mist rolls over. But what I would strongly recommend is probably just having him 2 different themes because I think Curse of Strahd deserves its own theme and tone and setting, and I think Strixhaven deserves its own tone, theme, and setting. So, because I don't have the book, because I'm not cool enough, I will be getting the book tomorrow, and I'll be discussing it there, and I'll be running it, and I'll be making videos on it, so don't you worry about that. The next bit of news I want to talk about is Strahd. I'm a Lunchable man myself, but no grief. So, Curse of Strahd, or I guess Strahd anyway, has a regular occurring theme going on, where... once a year, in the Curse of Strahd community, there is an event ran called Strahd Must Die Tonight. And this has been going on for, I think, 4 years or 3 years. It's been going on officially in the Discord 3 years now, but I think that there was an event before then, so I think it may be 3 or 4 years. I'd have to double check here. But the event usually pertains to, hey... you run the game of... you run Curse of Strahd, and you start the players off in the castle, and they have to kill Strahd. And that's that. And a bunch of people take it a bunch of different ways. Some people say, hey, we're going to do a martial-only run, so no spellcasters, no spells at all. Some people say, hey, we're going to have it where all the PCs are main NPCs from the campaign book. Oh, we're going to do it in space. We're going to have it... Strahd be a Muppet. We're going to have, laser swords. We're going to have, people do a bunch of different things on Strahd Must Die Tonight. So what I'm doing this year is I am actually running the classic Curse of Strahd I6 Ravenloft. My I6 Ravenloft is going to be ran using old school essentials. So we're issuing away the 5e stuff, and we are doing it a blast from the past style. This is going to be straight up pretty much how the adventure was ran those many years ago. I think this came out maybe like 40 some odd years ago at this point. So I'm going to be running that, and I'll be having signups in the Discord about it. So if you wanted to play Ravenloft as it was made all those years ago using old school rules, then come on down. What I will say though is 5e has kitty gloves on. Old school play, and specifically Ravenloft, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, there's going to be death. In old school style play, there is straight up save or dies. There's going to be things, I say, hey, so-and-so happens, roll a save, and if you fail, you die. That's the end of story, no save. There are level drain. Level drain is basically the undead hits you, and you were once a 7th level fighter, and now you're back down to a 5th level fighter. And this is really bad because all of your henchmen, hirelings, retainers, and followers, if they're low level, if they're only like level 1 or 2 and they get hit by level drain, then they're just straight up dead. And also very, very important is the fact that we, in fact, are using the old school rule of when you drop to 0 HP, you are dead. So there is no... whack-a-mole, there is no death saving throws, there is none of that. If you drop to 0 HP, you are dead. That's the end of story. And of course, there's no long rest, so you can't simply just try and hide out somewhere for 8 hours and get all your health back. A long rest, air quote long rest in old school gaming, got you back anywhere between 1 to 3 HP. you got next to nothing back. So this is going to be a deadly encounter. This is going to be a deadly adventure. And if anybody wants to sign on in, I will have links for that after the stream later tonight. So let's see what everyone has to say. Would you consider an evil act to stuff and wall mount an owlin? So, yeah, absolutely yes. It always comes up in my games, no matter who I'm running for at any given time. There's always the people that ask, hey, can I eat this one humanoid creature? And my blanket general rule of thumb is eating any sort of humanoid is taboo in the world. It is straight up, just, considered wrong. It's cannibalistic in a sense, even though they aren't. If you are human and you want to eat, like, let's say an owl folk or a lizard folk or whatever, it doesn't matter. They are sentient to a degree, and thus it is taboo. It always comes up. I don't know why. People always want to eat everything. Hi, sir. I like the concept a lot, but something feels too real. The coffee shop adventure seemed too real. The coffee shop adventure, yeah. So the adventures found in Strixhaven are going to be definitely more grounded, which is funny because it is a magical hijinks adventure. I'm definitely going to be going, once again, I'm going to be going over Strixhaven, don't you worry, and I'm going to be talking about how to make it magical and hijinksy and fun, so don't you worry about that. Hi all, hi, had no fun. Hi Helga. Sounds super hardcore. Yes, the Strahd must die tonight using old school essentials will be hardcore. So, for that one, I'm basically straight up, whoever is playing in this, you're gonna be anywhere between a level 6 to level 8 adventure. Because fun fact for those of you that are new to old school gaming, classes did not level up at the same time. The thief leveled up faster than the fighter, and the fighter leveled up faster than the wizard. So people are at different levels. So it's gonna be an XP range of so and so. And the really cool thing is that it's not just the PCs alone. It's not going to be the 4 PCs up against the world. You are going to have a full retinue of henchmen and specifically retainers. And these retainers are going to flush you out. So each individual PC is going to have anywhere between 3 to, I believe, 7 retainers, depending on their charisma bonus. So you're not going to be alone, but I am here to tell you that people are going to die, and it's very possible that it could be a total TPK. Yes, there could be. If I get 4 people to play, and they each bring anywhere between 3 to 7 retainers, that's a whopping total of like 20 some odd people, there is still the likelihood of a TPK. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, people. Level drain was evil. Level drain is absolutely horrendous, but I am keeping true to old school style play. I'm going to be running it purely on the books, and that'll be interesting to see. Hard mode, absolutely. It's going to be a hardcore mode engage. I agree with you, level drain sucks. Level drain is terrible. I can't wait. Evil just in game, or does that cross over to real life too? Yes. Sign me up for I6, baby. I will have signups in the Discord later on. Message retracted. Hi, Trevor. I remember running Ravenloft. That will be shocking. Yes, it will. It'll definitely be a new experience for a lot of people, because I myself have been running a lot of old school stuff, but I know a lot of people are new to old school style play, and it is definitely night and day. This is not 5th edition and old school and running Ravenloft, 2 entirely different games. Are you saying D&D existed before 5e? It's surprising, I know. D&D is a spy for Martians. He is. I'm bringing 21 gnomes. Hey, gnomes are not bad. Also, fun fact, for those of you new to old school play, class is race. So basically you have a fighter, you've got a wizard, you've got a cleric, but then you've got elf. And elf is just elf. And then you got halfling. Halfling is just halfling. Then you've got gnome. Gnome is just gnome. So it's very unique. In particular, the elf is a Gish-like character. You would think of them like an Eldritch Knight. They have both casting and martial capabilities. The halfling is sort of like a thief, but they're very lucky. The dwarf is kind of like a fighter, but it has some sturdy points to them. The gnome in particular, the gnome is like a spellcaster. I guess a magician in this case. Yes, at least 8 different editions. There has been at least 8 different editions of D&D. Could not get my 5e group into the idea of OSE games someday. The trick is you just run it. The trick to running different game systems for your players is to just say, hey, I know for a fact that me running this game is going to give you more enjoyment, so let's run this one game. And then you just run it, and that's the end of the story. If they go into it with a negative mind space and just ruin it, then of course they're going to ruin everything. But explain to them that you running whatever sort of system is going to bring more enjoyment to the table, and they will love it. We level drained TPK in the early 80s Ravenloft. 'Twas brutal. Absolutely. I know for a fact that there's a really good possibility of a TPK when I run this. Looks for those players at the wargaming tables. True. Love this channel. Your content on Waterdeep was lifesaver. Ran the first session last night and it came out perfect. Can't wait for your further content. I am making more content and I'm also going to be making an announcement about Waterdeep later on as well. Wargamers, the original D&D players. True. D&D originated from a war game called Chainmail. I am trying to explain that Earthlings and Martians can live together and we are the same. Fry Minis, once again, back to work. Beefy blessings be upon you. Bye. Thank you so much, Fry Minis. That $4 is absolutely going to the Give Me a Chair Foundation. Thank you so very much. Alrighty. So, yep, later on, I will have links for that in the Discord later on. So let's talk about me doing some shorts. If you noticed, I put out a short today. It was a very simple one. It was a Tomb of Annihilation in 1 minute. I will be making shorts about various topics and degrees because shorts are, quick, easy, and fun. And they hit a whole different metric on YouTube. Basically, YouTube is telling us to make shorts, and I'm saying, hey, might as well. So I'll be doing books in 1 minute. I'll be doing 1 minute encounters. I'll be doing maybe little fun skits and all that stuff. I'll be doing a whole bunch of little variety things with the shorts because I think the shorts are a really great way to, just get my thought process in on whatever I'm thinking about. In particular is the encounters. So I have a whole list on things on shorts I'm going to be making. And one of them is going to be DM, stuff, basically all about, hey, let's have a 1 minute encounter. And I'll basically describe to you the scenario, how your players got in there, what monster are they going up against, or what trap are they facing, or whatever. And then, just cover that in 1 minute because, quite frankly, 1 minute's all you need to describe a fun little encounter that's going to, fill up a good session of your time. And I'm going to be doing a lot of that. I'm going to be covering the books in 1 minute because, just talking about, oh, hey, like Xanathar's got everything. It introduces this, this, and that. And, oh, hey, Waterdeep Dragon Heist, your adventures go through this, this, and that. Just a very simple, casual way to go about, making a video. I have to mention I'm a great fan of your work videos and awesome stuff you do. Thanks again. Rollers, thank you so much. Thank you so very much. Winding yarn right now, but I'm watching. Love shorts because I have no attention span. That is the funny thing about our society. So there is plenty of studies that show that there is a reason why us human beings have a shorter attention span. It's more than likely that it has everything to do with technology and drugs because, the technology that we consume and the drugs that get prescribed to us. Basically, our attention span is getting shorter and shorter. I think the perfect example of that is baseball. Baseball was invented at a time where there was literally nothing better to do in the world. Baseball was invented in like the 1800s. That's why baseball games are incredibly long. That's why baseball games go forever. And nowadays, baseball doesn't appeal to a lot of people because it takes too long and there's too many games. There's a clear indicator of our society moving down in how much attention we can divert to any one thing. And I can complain about that all I want. I'm not going to complain about it, mind you. I'm just going to simply state out that, you can't fight against the tides. You can't say, hey, screw this, stuff. I'm going to make a 5-hour long video in protest of all these shorts. You just gotta go with the flow, Mind you, I'm still going to be making regular content. It's just I'm also going to be making shorts. So don't you worry about that. Steve, oh my god, thank you so very much. Wanted to say I have enjoyed your segments on the DM roundtables. I am enjoying getting a wider view of how people play. Thanks. Thank you so very much. Once again, $5 goes an incredibly long way. I am poor after all. YouTube does not pay the bills, funnily enough. Speaking of paying the bills, I guess we can also transition now into No Fun's Guide to Everything preview. So, No Fun's Guide to Everything, pending title as of right now. I might change it depending. It really comes down to what's going on here. But I already have an incredibly solid lineup for the first issue. No Fun's Guide to Everything is going to be available on my Patreon, and it is going to be a grab bag of content for delivered to you monthly. This monthly zine is going to be a themed magazine, so each month is going to be a different theme, and each zine is going to come with a wide bevy of topics, articles, features, traits, things you can throw into your game that are going to be lovely for you. You can either use them wholesale, you can pick them apart, you can do whatever with them. But I already have a solid lineup on my first issue here. So I wanted to give you guys a preview of the first one. So the very first zine is covering villages. So this one is just talking about, starting up the humble beginnings of many adventures take place in villages. So here I already have listed, I've got 2 new subclasses, new rest variants, random tables, NPC morale system, article of why we play the game, rollable table for random villages, new feats, new spells, new magic items, new monsters, and a 1-page dungeon. Mind you, when I say 1-page dungeon, I'm referring to a 1-page adventure. It's just that 1-page dungeon just rolls off the tongue so incredibly well. So, that is my cheeky, quick little preview on my first issue, which will be coming out in January. The No Fun's Guide to Everything. I've already got a lineup on what's to come, what I'm working on, and I can't wait to dole that out to everybody because I've got a lot of things cooking up in the works, and I think a lot of people are gonna like it. And even if you don't use everything here, because there's quite frankly a lot, I sincerely hope that if you get any one issue, then you're gonna walk away with something. Even if that is just some new monsters, even if that is just some new subclasses, or whatever, I sincerely hope that you always walk away with something. And I'm going to be offering quite a lot, so it's more than likely you're going to be able to walk away with something. Alrighty. And they have taken steps to increase the speed and excitement of baseball, and the diehards, in some cases, hate the change, hard to please all. True. Absolutely. So, that is what's cooking up there in the monthly zine. Looking forward to the guide. Thank you. I am looking forward to putting it out. I've been eating blueberries this whole time, by the way. Blueberries are a great way to eat and hydrate at the same time. Alrighty. That is what's cooking on right now. I am going to be posting up a whole bunch of things in the Discord later tonight about joining the Strahd game. And I'll be doing a whole bunch of other fun things. And now, time to take it on to questions I've been getting from the Discord. But first, a word from no sponsors, because I've never been sponsored. Sad to say. Alrighty, from Shield of Eyes, I suppose when I would ask when the community games are planned to start and what systems you're planning to use for them. So I've alluded that I'm going to be doing some community games, and those will be held in my Discord, and I'll be posting about them later tonight. The 3 game systems I'm going to be predominantly using are 5th Edition, Old School Essentials, and Dungeon Crawl Classics. And the reason why I'm hitting a bevy of different game systems is because, quite frankly, each game system provides a different tone and theme of the game. When I run a cool, awesome, heroic, epic adventure, it's going to be using 5e. When I run a gritty, you're all worthless beings, I'm going to be probably using old school essentials. And when I want to run a weird, wacky tone, then I'm going to be using Dungeon Crawl Classics. I'll be posting all that fun stuff later on tonight. From Monkey, what is your favorite flavor of ice cream? Fun fact, I have not eaten ice cream in, I want to say, 8 years at this point. I've been abstaining myself from the delicacies of this world. But if I had to guess, probably vanilla. Maybe. Probably vanilla. Sushi or pizza. Once again, this is coming from the Discord. Sushi or pizza? Sushi. Absolutely. What is your favorite dragon in 5e? Blue dragons. Blue dragons are my favorite because I love desert biomes, because blue dragons are unique. They look cool. I love lightning. Very awesome. From Von Pepper, do you still have the same opinion on the Silvery Bard spell? So, Von Pepper, I noticed that you've been commenting quite a lot on that video. So here is my opinion on the Silvery Barb spell. It is clearly ruining people's games. The introduction of a overpowered spell at a low level that does multiple features for a reaction is a power spike that goes too far, too much, uses too many features, does too many things. And quite frankly, that does ruin the game for some people. But the thing is it doesn't ruin my game. I mentioned it, in the video. Like, I fully comprehend and understand that it's an overpowered, broken spell. I get that. But at the same time, I personally don't care. Because whenever I'm running a game, specifically for my group of players, this might not be for every group of players, just my particular group of players, they play the game a certain way. And most important of all is they play a game a certain way to have the most fun. They don't do things to limit their fun. They do things to enhance their fun. If from here on, my players choose this spell because they think that it's going to enhance their fun, and in practice it does enhance their fun, then I'm winning because my players are having fun. I understand, of course, that other people are not going to have fun with the spell because it is overpowered, because it steps on too many shows, because it takes longer to activate, because it does so many other things. I get that. But at the same time, when it comes to my particular group of players, I'm not too perturbed. And something very important to note is, I'm going to make a video about this soon, but spell slots, and specifically casters, get this huge rap in D&D, specifically in 5th edition, that they are overpowered. And why is that? Why is it that marshals look so incredibly weak, and then casters are just on this other plane? Why is it that casters are so much better? And I don't want to say it in a negative way, but to put it bluntly, I could say that people are running the game wrong. And what do I mean by that? Basically, I'm gonna be making a video about this sooner or later, but basically, if you were to look at the D&D classes, there's a clear asymmetric design. The fighter gets these abilities at these times, and they get them back on a short rest or long rest or whenever. And then the caster, let's say the wizard gets these features, and they get this much at this time, and they get this much back on a short rest or long rest. So it's asymmetric game design. There is no balance to it. It's not even across the board. Now, what ends up happening is that asymmetric game design was focused around the idea of encounters over the course of the adventuring day. So originally, the idea was that you were going to get into 6 to 8 encounters in a day. Mind you, not necessarily combat encounters, but just encounters overall. So if I need to make like a graph and chart about this, but a perfect example is to compare the fighter to the paladin. So In the beginning of the adventuring day, the paladin is way better than the fighter because the paladin can pump out smites. The paladin is so much stronger than the fighter because they're doing the same thing, but the paladin just pumps out more damage. But what ends up happening is, over the course of the adventuring day, the paladin starts up here, the fighter up here, or down here, and then they slowly begin to merge. And if you have enough encounters, the fighter ends up being better than the paladin because the paladin gets tapped out on all their abilities, but the fighter, so long as they, get their short rest, the 2 short rests that you're normally given in a day, they end up, being able to tank through. Same thing with the wizard. Same thing with all the casters. If you run a game where you only get into 1 encounter in a day, the casters are always going to outshine certain people. So with this spell, the Silvery Barb spell, it is a very, once again, admittedly openly broken, super OP spell. But at the same time, if you're running a game where they get into a bunch of encounters in a day, they're going to run out of spell slots. And then, that's the end of the story, right? I'm not defending the spell, mind you. I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, this is a good spell. I'm not going to admit that. It's not a good spell. It was terribly designed. It was terribly worded. Not worded. It was worded perfectly fine. It's just, broken. It was not a good spell to make. But the fact of the matter is, the spell exists. Does it belong? It doesn't belong in most games. But I don't care about it in my game. Am I going to make... vanilla is underrated, absolutely. Am I going to make enemies that use Silvery Barb? Maybe. So, actually, something I want to highlight here is I no longer use conventional 5e stat blocks. I no longer use the normal. Because, quite frankly, I'm tired of the traditional 5e stat blocks. So I'm gonna drag a thing here if I can. But I no longer use normal stat blocks, and when it comes to casters, I typically don't even have them using spell slots. I typically have them just having magical effects. And yeah, maybe I will have an enemy caster here and there that has a different, ability that is similar to that. But I typically don't use the traditional things anymore because I've got, I think that my system is a little bit more enjoyable, not only for my players, but for myself. So let me see if I can find it here. I made a video about this a while ago. Basically, it was monster attacks suck, if any of you watched that. So let me see if I can find a picture of that I can drag onto this thing. Where is it? Strength? No. Where could I find a picture of that? Where the frick? If I can't find it in the next 5 seconds, I'm gonna freak out. No, I'm not gonna freak out. Don't worry. God, I've got so many files on my thing from all the videos that I make and all the things that I do. Giant? What happens if I type in giant? I don't know if it'll pop up, but gosh darn it, I really want that now. I'm gonna go over to another tab and I'm gonna take a picture of this thing. But in essence, if I do use another creature that has this, has the spell, then I think that's fine. I'm not gonna pour it on them, because I think using any one element too often is pretty boring. But I definitely think it's perfectly reasonable to have an enemy that has a spell of a similar or same ilk that the players use. Mind you, there's already effects already like that in the game, right? There's already enemy effects that have a similar approach to, like, oh, hey, forcing a reroll or giving disadvantage or giving someone else advantage. That already exists. It's just not in a reactionary sense with one spell slot. My God, I'm losing my mind. Here we go. Monster attack. Now I've got to watch my own video, and then I got to take a screenshot of the stat block here. Alrighty. A very lengthy process here. Pictures, screenshot, me. Little picture of me. I'll edit it down just a little bit here. And save. And go back to the video and put it in here. Here we go. Boom. Okay. So basically what I do is I create monsters that have like different attacks. And basically I roll like a random dice to determine what attack they're doing for that turn. So if it is a melee person, then it's like, yeah, they just do the traditional attack, you know. Or it's they do something unique, like they grapple you, or they make you have an ability effect, or whatever. When it comes to casters, it's a similar kind of thing. Basically, if it's a caster, then it's like, okay, they cast a spell that does this sort of effect. You know, it damages you. They cast this sort of effect, which charms you, or incapacitates you, or does whatever. So, yeah, I imagine I'll make monsters that do a similar thing to Silvery Barbs. I imagine I'll do that. Oh, that... Yeah, there. Alrighty. But if you have any further questions about the Silvery Barbs air quote controversy, feel free to chime in. That one, I know... I mentioned this in the beginning. You might have missed it, but this Strixhaven in particular is going to be the book that absolutely changes how people approach running 5e in regards of what they allow, what they don't allow, what people themes are, and all that fun jazz. Monster stat blocks in D&D 5e are very tame, weak, and boring. I would definitely agree with that. I think the issue with 5e stat blocks is they take up too much space on the board. You know, the smallest stat block takes up a quarter of a page, which is way too much. And secondly, the attacks are just boring, right? If you threw a dart at all of the 5e monsters, you're going to land on something that verbatim says multi-attack, they make 2 attacks, and da-da-da. Like, they just make the same 2 boring attacks. And that's why I'm introducing a new system, and you're going to be seeing it in my magazine there, where I introduce different monster attacks that do different ability effects. They target not just your AC, but also your stats or your ability checks or whatever. Because there is so much nuance potentially in the game, and just targeting AC with the same 2 basic melee attacks that do X number of damage is very, very boring. Are there spells that seem fun and well balanced in Strixhaven? I believe so. I believe some of the spells in Strixhaven are perfectly fine. It's just that, of course, they all got swept under the rug by, you know, the controversy of Silvery Barbs. The thing to consider when looking at the OP-ness of a spell is, when do you get it? How easy is it to cast? And, you know, what are its effects? A lot of people are immediately saying that that Silvery Barb should be a 3rd level spell, which is, like, that's a huge gap, right? Like, if you say that Silvery Barbs is a straight up 3rd level spell, or even higher, you know, if you want to get into the finagling of making Silvery Barbs less OP, there is a lot of things you probably need to do. You need to change its, maybe change its range, maybe change it's just a verbal thing, maybe change its activation effect, maybe change its spells, you know, maybe do a whole bunch of various things. I don't think any just one fix makes it not OP. It feels like people have forgotten that these MTG books provide overpowered things as a rule because they are different settings. Ravnica has some pretty whack stuff, lol. Yes, Ravnica in particular had backgrounds, much like Strixhaven has, where it introduces a background that gives you more than a traditional 5e background. Mind you, I'm personally in the camp that 5e backgrounds are absolutely worthless. 5e backgrounds are absolutely pointless. Nobody uses the background feat ever. It doesn't give you anything in particular. I think the background is something that is should be reintroduced in the next D&D, Evolution 5.5 whatever. Because I think backgrounds just deserve something that actually makes sense. Backgrounds are just absolutely worthless. And so yeah, they are OP. I've been adapting, changing, and creating attacks and abilities for them. I find it super fun, but hard work sometimes. Well, just subscribe to my magazine, and you'll be given a whole bunch of monsters with fun, unique abilities that you can use on your own. Question from How to D&D. Do you think your monster stat block looks like the 4A monster stat block? Because it looks like it to me. So, a while ago, I made a video about looking at the ghoul stat block through the ages. About looking at the ghoul stat block from 1st edition, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And I believe it was unilaterally, a unanimous decision that everybody liked the 4th edition monster stat block the best. Which is very interesting, right? Because if you look at all the, I might have to link the video, but basically, all of the stat blocks had good things going for them, but a lot of them had bad things going on for them. In the early editions of D&D, the stats itself were really tight and compact, and it told you a bunch of information, but it didn't tell you what the effects actually were. And then you flash forward all the way to 5th edition, the stat block is huge. It's needlessly large. It's ridiculously large. 4th edition had the tightest, most concrete of all of the stat blocks, and yet 4th edition is, once again, unanimously the most hated of all of the editions of D&D. So it's very interesting that everyone loves the stat blocks, but not the game itself. Unless you're Matt Colville. Matt Colville loves 4th edition. For the 2 years I have been DMing. 5e backgrounds are pointless. 90% of the time, players just do custom ones to put their skills wherever they want. Yes. I do want to make a system that actually makes backgrounds matter. Backgrounds would be used if downtime was used more. Yes, downtime should be used more, and my long rest system that I'm introducing in this first zine, it will probably introduce more downtime. Will I be able to play my centaur? Only if you're half minotaur as well. Beef. Have you seen Odyssey of Dragon Lords by Arcanum Worlds? They introduced epic paths that they're really neat. They're like backgrounds kind of, but in addition to them, yeah. Yes, I have. Fun fact about that: Odyssey of the Dragon Lords was actually created by some BioWare writers, so it had a pretty talented team there. Pretty cool stuff. Yeah, I think backgrounds deserve a lot more love and praise. If you look at Pathfinder, for example, Pathfinder basically made backgrounds give you a plus to your stat, which directly influenced, your character. So maybe D&D could probably use something like that. I think you're wrong on backgrounds. The background is how a DM knows how to shape the world to his players. When I chose the Urban Bounty Hunter, my DM made context for me to grow the story. So that's the thing, is the story is the important aspect of it. When you look at a D&D game, are the players the game? Are the players the story? Or are the characters being introduced into a story that they're just filling in? For example, that being the 5e modules. The 5e modules are not about your player characters. The 5e modules are about an event that the player characters just so happen to get swept up in. If you're running a homebrew game, then absolutely the story could potentially be about you. But as we know, 50% of games ran use the 5e modules, and thus your background doesn't matter for those games, more often than not. So it's something important to think about. Any ideas on how to run Rocky type of preparing for a fight subplot for a PC? It's like a workout montage. A Rocky montage. I think the easiest way to do a Rocky montage would be a series of skill checks. So basically, it's like, you're working out, this way. Roll in athletics. Hey, you're working out this other way. Roll in acrobatics. Hey, you're studying up on how to like counter your opponent. Roll a wisdom check. You could have a series of skill checks, and I think that could be a ton of fun. That's probably what I would do for a montage. Yep, Jesse Sky and James Ohen. They made Baldur's Gate 1, 2, and Mass Effect and Dragon Age. Award-winning games right there. Alrighty, other fun questions from the Discord. If you had to choose between becoming the hero of the multiverse by saving the world from the wrath of Tiamat or having a nice long nap after a slice of tiramisu, which one would you choose, and why did you choose nap and tiramisu? Because the problem is I don't believe I could fight Tiamat because I'm a worthless human being and I only have 4 hit points. I don't trust in my. Actually, I'm willing to bet that I've got more HP than a commoner. Maybe I've got a bit more, but maybe I've got like the stat block of like a guard. But I don't think I could go up against Tiamat. Another fun question. How many stairs must a mage walk down before we call them a mage? How many stairs must a mage walk down before we call them a mage? Stairs must... I unfortunately have streamer brain going on, and I can't decipher that riddle. You just made it to 4th. Feet or ability score increase? Feet. Always feet. There is feats that are supernatural and supranatural. Feats only push you within a physical bound. They just had a Kickstarter and funded for a new Viking adventure you should keep an eye on. Looks like a lot of fun. I saw that they were asking for a tremendous amount of money. $168,000, I believe. Which, fun fact about Kickstarters, ladies and gentlemen, and non-binaries, and everybody, few and far between. Basically, when it comes to Kickstarter, there is an unfortunate practice where a lot of companies purposely undersell their product purely for the prestige of saying that they were funded in X time. So a perfect example of that being, there's been Kickstarters that had a whole company, working, and for them to make what they had made, it cost them maybe $20,000 to make. But then when they go on Kickstarter, they say, "Oh yeah, we're gonna start the Kickstarter, and we only need a funding of $10,000." And then what they do is they tack on the, "Oh hey, if we get more funding, then we get to add extra stuff to it." And what this does is this creates this market of these companies that can undersell a product because they can over-deliver. But unfortunately for individuals like myself, we don't have the capability of doing that. We simply don't have the resources allotted. And much like how the DMs Guild has an issue where there is, conglomerates that are able to outperform the individuals, Kickstarter has an issue where these groups and companies are able to absolutely undersell a product and make it look like less is more. And that is unfortunate. LOL, I rewrite every module, can't stand most of them written. Frostmaiden had so many holes. Frostmaiden doesn't have holes. It's a sunk ship right from the start. I do agree. Rewriting every module is definitely one of the best ways to go. Workout montage of going to kill a mythic beast. That'd be pretty cool. Rising up, back on the street. You could definitely have that. I definitely think you can run a campaign adventure and either format characters as the focus or story as the focus. Yeah, you certainly can. But I'm willing to bet that the average game, meaning 51% of games, are probably ran with the idea that it really doesn't matter where the characters came from because, hey, we're playing a story, just enjoy the adventure at hand. I'm willing to bet that's the case. I could be wrong. Maybe a ton of people are running, games where it is all about the individual characters and it's about exploring their nuances and all that fun jazz. That could be possible. There's probably a bunch of games like that, being ran. But I'm willing to bet that most games are saying, hey, who cares about your background? There's a cave with goblins. Go fight the goblins. I'm willing to bet that's the case. And tiramisu is good. Tiramisu is good. But I think both will be a little different in the way you approach and run the game. Yes. So So yeah, I'm planning on running a game where basically it's a classless system, essentially using the 5e chassis, where you start off as peasants, but then you earn your abilities based on the adventures that you do. So I say, hey, this first adventure, it's going to be Bob's, adventure. We're going to be focusing on Bob's background. Bob, you've got 2 adventures at hand. Your uncle wrote a distressing letter in the north, but also your cousin mentioned that there is something going on to the south. And then you choose to go north or south. And depending on where you went, you get a different ability. So let's say Bob went to go help out his uncle. His uncle is a martially trained person, and thus, because he went on that adventure, he gets a fighter ability. But if he goes to the south and helps out his cousin is actually a thief, so he learns a thief ability. I'm going to run an adventure like that because I want a strong emphasis on the individuals, and most important of all is I want, by the end of the campaign, to look at your character sheet and look at every single little piece of thing on your character sheet and recognize that you earned it. Something Matt Colville talked about recently is the issue with 5e characters is that you know what you're going to get, and thus there is a difference between earning your abilities and receiving your abilities. No, it doesn't matter what you do as a fighter in 5e, because no matter what you do, when you level up, you're going to get this ability. It doesn't matter what you do as a rogue, you're going to get this ability, and so on and so forth. So when you have a game where everything you do is based solely and directly off of a thing that you did, you then have a lot more intimacy with it. So I promise you, if you look at a game like 5th edition, you look at the end of the campaign, you look at your character sheet and you look at all these abilities, and you're like, yeah, I got those abilities because, of course, that's how it is. But if you have a game where every ability is earned, you can look at that ability and say, hey, I earned that ability because I helped out my uncle. I earned that ability because I helped out my cousin. I earned that ability because I answered the king's request. I got that ability because I defeated the cult, etc., etc. I think that is a lot more emergent and fun storytelling than traditional adventuring. And I think adventures like that, where the story is first and foremost on the players and player characters, of course, I think that's a lot more engaging than just going off on an adventure, generic A adventure, and just getting generic abilities. Have I seen JoJo's Bizarre Adventures? I just got Overarms, which is supposed to be a RP system for JoJo. I have not looked at Overarms, but yes, I have indulged in JoJo's Bizarre Adventures. And I will say JoJo's is a fantastic show, and everybody should watch it. And if you don't watch anime, then you can read the manga as well. How would I fix the Silvery Barbs spell? So, Silvery Barbs is a spell that I mentioned this in both the video that I talked about, the Silvery Barbs, and also the early on. But fixing implies that it's broken for your game. I understand completely that it is broken for most people's games. It is not broken for my game because I don't care. But what I would strongly suggest is you talk to your players and discuss what they want out of the game. What abilities do they use, and why are they using them? If you have any players at your table that immediately look at Silvery Barbs and say, oh, I have to have that because of da-da-da, because it's overpowered and I need to be overpowered, because it's flavorful and I love the flavor, because it's this and that. You start fixing it from there. So if you have a group of players that say want to be overpowered, then I would say, yeah, okay, if you want to be overpowered, then probably this is pushing the line because it trounces all the other abilities and stuff. Let's make it a higher level spell so you can cast it less, and you can't cast it at tier 1. Maybe you make it all the way up to a tier 3 or a 5th level spell, or not 5th level, a a 3rd level spell. So like the earliest you get is 5th level. Maybe you make it so that you split Silvery Barbs into 2 different spells. So you have one reaction spell of forcing an opponent to reroll, and then you have another reaction spell of giving your a friend advantage or yourself advantage. Maybe you make it so that it's not only verbal, but it's a somatic and also a material. Maybe you require that they have to spend some sort of resource to cast a spell because it's so incredibly strong. Maybe instead of it being a spell, you tie this to I think this is a very good call here on myself here. I think just transforming the spell into a magical item that can be used X number of times a day or a week is a great way to go. Maybe you say that this thing has, 1d4 charge or 1d6 charges for the whole week. And then you can use the spell a number of times throughout the week, and then boom. Silvery Barbs is... I mentioned this now like 3 times, but Silvery Barbs is definitely going to not be at a lot of tables. And I fully get that. I fully understand. But thankfully for my predicament that I'm in with my players, they don't care about that stuff. Thankfully. I know a lot of people min-max. I know a lot of people want to be powerful. I know a lot of people want to break the game. I know a lot of people want to do a bunch of various things. And this spell definitely leans toward that. So, maybe look into making it a magical item, perhaps. Alrighty, other fun questions from the Discord. What is the best elf? Token, swords, and sorcery, or Christmas? So, token elves are essentially just, they're just essentially humans that are snobby and live forever. Sword and sorcery elves are snobby, but they're gishes. Christmas elves are basically, just like indentured servants. I'd probably have to go with sword and sorcery, because the sad nature of the token elves is that they are pretty cool, but unfortunately they are susceptible to the elements. Even though they do live forever, it doesn't matter how good of a fighter you are, if you get outnumbered by the Urukai, all your warriors are going to get run down. And, so this and that. And plus a whole bunch of people hate you. In Swords and Sorcery, not everyone hates the elves, so I'd probably have to say Sword and Sorcery. Also, considering the half-dragon template can be applied to any humanoid, giant, or monstrosity, or beast, what is your cursed mixture of choice? Half-dragon template can be applied to any humanoid, giant, monstrosity, or beast. I think a half-dragon, like, owlbear. It'd be half-dragon, half-dragon, half owl, half bear. I think that'd be pretty terrifying. And, my personal mix is half mimic, half dragon. The Silvery Barb spell is so broadly effective in every respect that changing it would just mean no longer Silvery Barbs. Either use it or ban it, in my opinion. That's an easy way to go. And I do strongly recommend that at this stage in the game, when you are running a game of 5th edition, because there are so many elements to the game now, because there are so many new subclasses, there's new feats, there's new races, there's new this and that. Because there's so many things, I do strongly recommend that before you run a game, you have a campaign like catalog, you have a campaign basically sheet of, hey, this is the tone and theme of the game that I'm running. I'm going to be running a game that has this certain style of theme in place, and thus X is allowed and Y is not allowed. I strongly recommend you doing that, because what I see a lot is a lot of people run a game and then basically people just show up thinking that anything can work. So putting your foot down and saying, hey, in my case here, I'm running a game of Strixhaven where everybody has to be a wizard. And boom, just like that. I don't have to worry about people trying to play the edgelord rogue. I don't have to worry about someone saying, oh yeah, I'm the warlock, but I'm, doing whatever. No, you have to do this. That's a little bit extreme, of course, but for like a generic adventure, what I would say is, yeah, because you are running an adventure that wants to be a little bit lower fantasy, you don't allow Artificer. And you don't allow these certain subclasses because they trivialize certain aspects of the adventure. You don't allow these spells because the spells don't fit in with the world. You don't allow, this race because the race doesn't belong here. I think a lot of people do need to finally sit down and truly figure out what they're allowing at their table or not. Obviously, in the beginning, like I mentioned before, in 5th edition, right there in the beginning, you only have the player's handbook, and, super simple. Life was easy. Flash forward now 5 years, 6 years later. We have many different books. We've got many different new spells, new feats, new races, new abilities, new everything. And as time goes on, people are running more and more different games, and the more and more different options that are being introduced basically just don't align with the sort of game people are trying to run. In my Harry Potter campaign, I want the climax to be my players trying to steal a MacGuffin during a play at the school without interrupting the play. How do I keep my players from running to teachers? How do I keep my players from running to teachers? Trying to steal a MacGuffin during a play at the school without interrupting the play. Either all the teachers are indisposed, either the time is ticking and the teachers do not like factor in the equation, like the teachers like would basically, it would take too long for them to interrupt. Maybe all your players are cursed to some degree, and thus, I mean, because it's a Harry Potter campaign in particular, you could definitely have it where everyone's cursed and they can't actually express what's going on. Maybe when they try to talk to a teacher, instead of them trying to warn, oh, hey, so-and-so's going on, maybe they say, oh, hey, teacher, how's the weather? And then they realize that they're cursed, but the other person wouldn't recognize that they're cursed. You could have a curse like that. And, yeah, I think those are 3 just general options there. Timer, teachers are busy, players cursed. Very simple right there. Gaming with randos is better with rails. I wholeheartedly concur. Because if you run a game for a bunch of randos, you're going to get people that show up with different expectations. And D&D does not mean one thing. D&D does not mean running exactly one style of adventure with one theme in mind, with one idea at its strong, focus point there. D&D means so many different things to so many different people that when you run for randos, you have to basically put the rails up and say, hey, this is the kind of game that's going on. Alrighty, any more questions from the Discord? Nope. So for those of you that didn't catch it, Strixhaven, I'll be doing a live stream tomorrow, opening about the book, a whole bunch of fun jazz there. For those of you interested, I'll be running I6 Ravenloft, the old school Ravenloft. I'll be running that using old school rules. And I will also be, in my Discord, I will also have open games of using 5e, using Dungeon Crawl Classics, and using Old School Essentials. I am starting up my production on shorts, because shorts are just a great way to go. And I am also working on my magazine, which will be available monthly on my Patreon. And that will be just a whole bunch of good grab bag of various things. Subclasses, subclasses, new game mechanics, random tables, articles, rollable tables. I just said rollable tables. New feats, new spells, new magic items, new monsters, new adventures, and a bunch of other various things that I'm working on. So that'll be available monthly. So check that out if you want. Any other questions? Anyone have any burning questions for me? I'm curious. I'm dying of anticipation. Do not be afraid. I don't bite. Hard. I always feel bad for waiters whenever they have to deal with that cringe, dad that says all the dad jokes, like, oh, da da da, oh, I don't do whatever. Any idea how to make melee combat more interesting, specifically for two non-martial class character fighting? Two non-martial class characters fighting. So one, I will be introducing fun new martial features in my in D&D's in my No Fun's Guide to Everything. So check that out. But what I will say off the top of my head is melee combat is a dance. It is a fluid, it's a duet, it's a play, it's an ensemble. When you look mechanically, just bare bones mechanically, and you can just say that, oh yeah, you just rolled a hit and you rolled a wound. But there is a lot more nuance to it. And I think that there's a lot of fun things we could introduce that allow you to reflect that. Have it be where the canny fighter can have an edge versus the brawny fighter, and the brawny fighter can have an edge versus the flighty fighter, and the flighty fighter can have an edge against so-and-so. I think there's a fun little rotation there of things going on, which once again I'll be introducing in my guide, so check that out should you want. But what I would just say off the top of my head is, to make combat more interesting, don't just have combat be a 25 by 25 grid and the two people meet up in the center and then they just slap each other. Have a dynamic environment. I know that we're used to, in specifically 5th edition here, I know that we're really used to the idea of being on a grid and you don't want to mess the grid. The grid's 5 feet each square and you don't want to mess that at all. But I do think that there is a lot more fun flavor to be had there. Like, for example, being if you got into a duel in the middle of a tavern, let's say, and there's tables and chairs everywhere. Then it could be, okay, on one person's turn, they kind of like kick a chair in their direction and then try to use that to their advantage. The other person stands up on the table. The other person tries to cut the chandelier on top of the other person. There's a lot of fun dynamics to be had with that. But you need to start getting creative. You need to start looking at the more than just the mechanical side of things. You need to start looking at the broad stroke side of things. Nice. I'm in the Discord. I'm the Discord user who just started the Strahd Aboleth campaign. Your good Strahd campaign guide is getting a lot of plays and replays from me. Thank you. Thank you so much. How far and wild beyond are you? My players are at the Palace of Heart's Desire, and I will be finishing the campaign, I believe, in a week. So I sped ran that game. And when is the guide to the Palace of Heart's Desires coming? I recorded the video and I need to edit it. For those of you that don't know, editing takes forever and is quite a pain, and I hate it. But I am poor and thus don't have an editor, so I have to do it myself. What were your favorite sections in Strahd? My favorite sections in Strahd specifically had to deal with the roleplay side of things, because I could point to, like, I like that dungeon, or I like this dungeon. But the interesting aspect of Strahd is that your players, if you were running a game where your players are happy-go-lucky adventurers and then find themselves in a terrible land, the land can, in fact, start beating them down. If they're constantly trying to make the world a better place, but everything they do fails because everything they do just results in more bad things going on, and they have to choose between the lesser of two evils constantly, then you see the ramifications of that dynamic about the role play between the characters and the inhabitants of the world, and how no matter how much they try and stem the tide of the evil all around them, it doesn't help. That's my favorite aspect of Curse of Strahd. Question: what YouTubers do you think would make a good panel for a DM roundtable to talk about D&D game from 1E to 5E? So first off, you, because you're old. I kid. I would have to pull some names there, but the unfortunate nature is the majority of the D&D YouTubers are purely 5e people. They started with 5e and they only stick to 5e. I myself have played through every edition of D&D except for, funnily enough, 4th edition. I haven't played through 4th edition yet. But I do plan on trying it out just to purely put it on my shelf and accolades there saying that I played it. So maybe I could grab some people to see who has played various editions of D&D. Will your Patreon have different tiers with different content available depending on how much we donate? Yes. So right now, basically, the low tier, the $2 tier, you get a fun little art piece that I do every single week. But then I am going to put up different things. I'm going to be updating my Patreon pretty soon here with all of that. But needless to say, the magazine is going to be for $5. And if you want more content, there will be higher tiers, and that'll come with additional stuff. So check that out if you want. If you want to help me out. I need all the help I can get. Environmental components allow creative ideas and try to incorporate different mechanics like shoving and suffocation. Yes. Once again, I will be incorporating new things, with new mechanics, dual rules, basically, more intimate, melee mechanics. In fact, off the top of my head, for my monthly themes that I have for my magazine, I'm going to be doing various things. And one of them, the first one being villages. That one's dealing with like, oh, hey, fun things to be found in villages and all that fun jazz. But one of the monthly themes is going to be martial schools. And that one's going to be giving martials that edge that everybody wants. Giving them new features, giving them new abilities, making them feel like they actually have a place and belong. So stay tuned for all of that. Yay, we are entering Thither next week. Heck yeah. No Fun Allowed is the GOAT of DM guides. Chad, thank you so very much. I'll tell you what. I'm glad you think that I'm the GOAT. What I will say, to not toot my own horn here, is that nobody has done as many guides on as many different modules as me. I have looked around, and there is other people who have done some DM guides for some of the modules, but nobody's done as many guides on the DM modules as me. I am now on my 6th module, and I'm going to be working on my 7th here. From what I recall looking around, I think the max anybody else has done is, I think, 4. So I think I'm kind of pulling ahead in that regard. I do want to be known as I want to be known as like kind of like the module guy, because I think the modules are a very important aspect of our hobby, because they are a shared experience that so many people have. So many different people are running these modules and getting into the modules and getting into D&D through them. And most important of all is new DMs. I need to make a video about this, but the unfortunate nature is Wizards of the Coast is not catering to new DMs. Even though they say they're trying, the fact of the matter is, the further D&D goes, specifically 5th edition, the further 5e goes, the harder it is for new DMs. Because a new DM hopping into 5th edition 5 years ago, they only had to deal with the player's handbook and the DMG. Now when you hop in, you look around and there's books galore. Look at this. Boom, boom, boom. There's just so many different books. There's so many things to look at. And I want to help new DMs. And I'm very thankful in that regard that on a lot of my videos, I get a lot of people that say, hey, first time DM, this is helping me out a lot. And I love that, because I want to help those people out. I want to nurture new DMs to be awesome, because Wizards of the Coast is somewhat dropping the ball on that. And so it's up to the community. And I am the community in a sense. So yeah. So thank you so much for that. You think you're going to check out Overarms, JoJo Tabletop RPG, and potentially even do a video on it? I'll have to check it out. I will have to check it out. I definitely want to check out a bunch of other tabletop role-playing games, because, spoiler alert, 5e is not the only tabletop role-playing game. But I've covered some other tabletop role-playing games on my channel, but I do need to cover more. I speak the truth, my friend. Chad, thank you so very much. Thank you. Do you think it's worth it to try to create the whole Quidditch system for Harry Potter campaign, or should I just have it be more cinematic event full of skill checks? What I would say is there's already, off the top of my head, I know for a fact that there is 2 Harry Potter game systems. I know for a fact. I've looked at both of them. And I do believe one of them had a spelled out Quidditch style system. So check that out. If you can't find them yourself, I'll find them later on if you remind me in the Discord. But yeah, a Quidditch system, a Quidditch game would be a ton of fun, especially if you got everybody involved on the team. You know, that'd be just a fun, various thing. It could just boil down to just be a whole bunch of skill checks. But I think that having like a mini game where you have to do X and Y to produce Z, I think that's a fun way to go. Do I have any plans on branching out to other brand modules like Arcanum, World's Odyssey of the Dragon Lords, or the new ones coming out, or Heliana's stuff? There are tons of really great modules out there that don't have that love of guides. The problem is that I only like making guides on things that I've ran, and unfortunately I haven't ran any of those other ones. I know I need to. I know I need to get around to it, but the unfortunate fact of the matter is I don't have all the time in the world. I do have I have X number. I have limited number of time. I do want to cover other like third-party products because one, I'm pitching my own third-party products here, so I think it's only fair that I showcase other third project stuff too. But yeah, absolutely. I do want to showcase off other things, and if I get the chance to look at these other things, I will definitely show it off if I can. Alrighty. Oh boy. Oh boy. I have. Yeah, I would love to. I've seen a lot of people, not a lot of people, but I've seen that people are now making a living off of running games. So there is several websites that basically where you can find DMs for hire. And I have been informed that because I am a YouTube personality, I've only got 5K subs, but whatever. I've been told that because I am a YouTuber, I actually can charge people $20 per player per session. And apparently I would be able to get away with that. So I was doing the math on that. I was like, man, $20 per player per session. How many people would I have to run for? And how many games would I have to run for that to equate to essentially a minimum wage job? And it's technically doable. If I was willing to run a number of players and a number of games in a week, then I could actually, make a air quo living off of it. I don't know if I want to do that just yet, though. I might do that at some point, but as of right now, I'm pretty content. One thing I will say, though, is... So as mentioned before, join my Discord. I'll be making a public announcement about public games that I'm going to be running. One thing I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be recording the games. So I'm going to ask everyone, I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to be recording these games. If you don't want to be recorded, don't join these games. But I'm going to be recording these games, and then I'll be re-uploading them to the channel. But what I'll be doing is I'll be having basically a DM commentary. So basically, I'll be running my adventure, and then popping on screen will be, comments of, hey, I had them roll this check because of X reason, and my thought process behind this encounter was this, and I did this and I did that. I think having games with a DM commentary would be a great way to, one, just figure out the kind of DM that I am. But two, I think it'd be a great way to have people that are new to DMing figure out the thought process behind it, because DMing is really tough for a lot of people, and figure out why does the DM say this, why does the DM do that, and having it spelled out there, I think that'd be a great way to go. Overarms is a very rules light to DM if you have it good homebrewing, so most people don't seem to like it. That's the problem with homebrewing is it's typically it's not necessarily homebrew, but some people see it as not pure, as it were. It's not the actual game. That's the unfortunate nature of the beast. Some people are just averse to putting icing on their cake. Some people are averse to putting mods on their video game. Some people are averse to putting a decal on their car, just the way it is. Startplayinggames.com. Yes, that is one of the paid DMing sites. LOL, it's a brutal way to make a living, but take my 20 to 40 hours if you go that route. Hey. What I'll say is $20 per session sounds terrible. I think for a lot of people it sounds terrible, but think about it this way. How much money are you spending on a ticket to the movie theaters, huh? Instead of spending money on an hour and a half long crappy movie, you could get DM'd by me for for the same price. I think that's one way to think about it. How much is the money to the fun? Movies are obviously just one aspect of it, but another aspect could be going to ride a horse. If you wanna ride a horse, riding a horse could be like $100 or something. You could ride a horse for $100, or you could play in 5 of my sessions. Think about it that way. Not satisfied until we get a Steal No Fun controversy. That no fun. I'm the no fun guy. That Steely guy sure is a scumbag. Am I right? That Steely Sam character. What a terrible individual. It's a great deal for players, for sure. I know because I'm a client. Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is too is it's not just there's a lot of aspects to think about, but quite frankly is the professionalism therein. So if I ran a public game, I know for a fact at some point I'm going to get people that don't care and people that, just shoot the shit. And I know people are just going to not take it as seriously because the buy-in for the experience was nearly non-existent. Basically, the only buy-in was their time. But if you pay for a DM, then there is a level of, courtesy allotted by everybody. Everybody is there for a reason. The DM is there providing a experience. The players are there to enjoy their time at the table. And a paid game is a great way to, ensure that you get what you want out of the game. Versus if it is a air quote free game full of randos, then maybe it's not exactly the sort of experience that you wanted. I just can't see the value in paid DMing if there's so many DMs available for free. Yeah, you get what you pay for, though, right? I think a lot of people might say hey, a bad DM, a bad D&D session, still a D&D session. I beg to differ. I think that I would much rather not play a game of D&D than playing a bad game of D&D. And let me tell you, I played in bad games of D&D, and it's terrible. When you pay for that game, you're paying for you're paying for that service, and you are ensuring that you're getting a certain quality. Sure is. Steely Sam? Oh, hello there, Steely Sam. Hello. Pay 100 to ride a horse or pay 20 to ride a griffin? I'd rather ride a horse because the fall isn't as bad. And I'm actually very good at riding a horse. Fun fact, for those of you that don't know, I can ride a horse pretty dang well. I've never ridden a griffin, nor would I want to ride a griffin because, once again, I feel like the fall could be devastating. If you fall off a horse, it sucks, but it's manageable. 10 out of 10 would choose the griffin. No way. Not a chance. I also DM, and it's a ton of work. I'm happy to pay great DMs for their time supporting artists for sure. Yes. So another way to look at it is when you're playing in person, there is already an expected tax of playing in that game. If you're playing in person, then you at the bare minimum should be force feeding the DM food and drink, right? You should be showing up with beer or booze or, kombucha, boba, whatever it is that they drink. Give them something to drink, pay, and then the players pay for the pizza. The players pay for the chips. The DM, because they are taking extra time out of their life to prepare this game, they should be bribed in some way, shape, or form. Now, of course, nowadays, and because of the pandemic, a lot of people transition over to online gaming. And with online gaming, we then lose out on the ability to bribe the DM with food and drink. So I think it's perfectly fine to basically translate the pizza tax over to a monetary value. I think that's one way to go about it, or one way to look at it. $20 for 4 hours is not insane. Sure, it is a barrier to entry, but $5 an hour for any service is very low. For sure. The thing to consider is, like, how much time does the DM prep? Does the DM prep a whopping total of, 2 hours for a 4-hour game? That's a whopping total of 6 hours for that week. And that's 6 hours of productivity. If I took that 6 hours and instead worked a minimum wage job of $15, let's say, I'd be getting paid a lot more than, the $5 between the 4 players. So I could be making infinitely more money by working a minimum wage job. Instead, I'm spending it with you all. So I think, respect people's time. Respect the DM's time. The DM spending this much time on the game. And also, another huge aspect of it, the DM's also spending money. For example is, let's take a look at this one. This one here costs $50. I pick up this thing and it's $50. So flat out, there's a monetary cost to running this adventure. It's $50, and then all the time spent reading it, all the time spent preparing the maps, all the time, double checking all that stuff. So that's even more money because it's $50 plus all the time. So if a DM is able to even recoup just a tiny bit of that expenditure, then, you're helping them out. One service I do see some groups do is the players pay for the book, and I think that's a perfectly fine, fair, and respectable way to go about it. Is there something new about Strahd? What was new about Strahd is if you join my Discord, I am going to be running an event called Strahd Must Die Tonight. So this event is basically I'm going to be running I6 Ravenloft, the original Ravenloft, before Curse of Strahd, oh so long ago. And you are going to be joined by a group of adventurers and all your beautiful little henchmen, hirelings, followers, and retainers. And you're going to storm Castle Ravenloft and try and kill Strahd. But this is going to be using old school rules, and there is going to be death galore. There's going to be save or dies. There's going to be level drain. There's going to be death at 0 HP, no death saving throws. So if you want to challenge yourself to see if you can beat Strahd over the overwhelming surmountable odds, then join up in the Discord. I will have a link I'll be making that after this stream. So feel free to check that out. Oh me, oh my. Goodness gracious, what a wonderful life. So yeah, that's what's going on with Strahd there. Other fun things, as mentioned before, I'll be running other games that I'll be recording, and then I'll be doing the DM commentary, so you can get an essence on how to run the game and my thought process behind every little action, why I roll this certain thing, why they're going up against this encounter, etc., etc. I'll be doing a bunch of fun little things like that. I'll be working on some shorts. I just released my first short today of my... I've released other shorts, but they're kind of just gimmicky ones. I plan on making shorts such as covering books in 1 minute, 1 minute encounters, maybe little skits and parodies, a bunch of other fun things like that. And tomorrow I'll be covering Strixhaven because I'm not cool enough to get a book early like some people. I might sound salty whenever I say that, but just let the record show, there is no consistency with how Wizard of the Coast gives out these books. There are people with next to 80,000 to 100,000 subs who do not get the books early, and there are people as low as 100 subs who do get the books early. So we have no understanding of how they actually go about giving out these books. But we do know that some people get the books early, and that's the end of the story. And I want to be one of those people, dang it. I actually cover the modules. Let me cover them, please. Despite the name, it's been fun, mate. Have a good day. Thank you. Thank you so much. Mind you, the no fun allowed thing, it's a bit of a gimmick, really, because it basically started with my players. At one point in the game, they were trying to do something incredibly stupid, and I said, no, you can't do that. And then they all started pounding the table, and they said, no fun allowed. No fun allowed. And it basically just stuck. I personally think I'm a fun DM. I think I'm a fun guy in general. But, you know, I think the no fun allowed thing's a pretty fun little naming scheme there, and it sticks out. It's different. It's unique. It's not exactly the best advertisable thing, because some people might get different expectations of what no fun allowed actually is. But, you know, gotta live with it. I have no idea what else I'd be named on YouTube if it wasn't for no fun allowed. I was originally going to go with Save or Die or Save or Dice. I was going to go with, like, you know, something like, you know, gimmicky D&D generic related, but I think No Fun Allowed, it just kind of, you know, it fits. It's certainly a memorable name. Yeah, I mean, it's unique because I was looking at, you know, like a few weeks ago, I was looking at all the other D&D YouTubers. Every single one of the D&D YouTubers has Dungeon, Dragon, you know, World, you know, they have like basically generic dice. They have a D&D something in their name, and it kind of like gets like there's too many of them, you know. It's like, oh, there's the dungeon guy, and then there's the DM guy, and then there's the dice guy, and then there's, you know, there's a bunch of people who have the same kind of naming scheme. So I'm glad my naming scheme kind of sticks out. Maybe it doesn't stick out in a good way, but it sticks out. I always find it funny when you see the DM's Guild products come out by the new Wizards of the Coast book, DM modules that add new maps, summaries, and expand on the modules. I too wish I could get the book ahead of time so I could have the maps fill the gaps ready. That would be nice, huh? That certainly put you above the competition, because you got to scramble the day it comes out to start doing all that, huh? Yeah, that is something very interesting. Is there's obviously people that get these products early, and there's clearly people that, you know, are straight up profiting from that, right? Whether that be from the DM's Guild, people make supplements and maps and, you know, guides and materials. It could be on, you know, YouTube, people just straight up making videos, like that's straight up getting them, you know, a leg up on the competition. So, you know what? Once again, not to sound salty, because I don't want to be salty, but it is unique to see, because it's like, okay, obviously some people use it to get an advantage of some sorts, but that being said, not everyone does. And I think I see this a lot on Twitter. I see a lot of people who get these books early and literally just post up one picture of them holding the book and then don't even talk about the book. I see a lot of that going on. So it's definitely something to think about. I also really like the name. I started watching you as preparation for Strahd, and it was my first time DMing. It's going pretty very well. Really well. I appreciate your videos. Thanks. Thank you. As mentioned before, Curse of Strahd is one of those books that's like, it's one of the biggest, most well-known adventures around. Yet, as a new DM, that would be terrifying. I'm very thankful that I got my DMness broken in before I started touching things like Curse of Strahd and whatever else, because, man, Curse of Strahd, you know, you read that thing is a tome, and it doesn't make a lick of sense. So I'm very thankful that my videos are able to help piece together the situation at hand. Yep. It's cool. I'll be salty for you. I demand Wizards of the Coast give you a copy at a time. Why, thank you. Thank you. Once again, you know, I'll tell you what, the salty thing for me isn't necessarily me not getting the book early. The salty thing is that there's a lot of people who get these books early who don't cover anything, you know, D&D, like, actually related in regards to books. There's a lot of people who get these books who, once again, you know, they just take the one picture, that's that. I do cover the modules. I cover how to run them for new people. I covered how to shake things up to make them unique and fun. I cover all these things about the modules. So I feel like of all the people getting these things early, maybe I should get them, but whatever. Once again, I don't want to be salty. I'm not salty. I can't be because, you know, I've already been so blessed with everything I've got going on for me right now. I'm a player in Strahd right now, and I understand everyone runs the game differently, but my DM doesn't really lean into the Gothic horror all too much. What I will say is Gothic horror and 5e D&D, sadly, typically don't go hand in hand. I talked to Dragnacard about this. I've got a huge, long thing about that, but you can't watch it because you're a player. But what I will tell you is there is a distinct difference between Gothic horror and dark horror and dark fantasy. It's detailed out in Van Richten's Guide to Everything here. And let me see if I can pull it up. But what I'll tell you is Gothic typically just doesn't have a place with a whole bunch of, you know, heroes running around with magic and beating up vampires and whatever else. Typically Gothic has a certain place in this world, and just due to the nature of how 5e mechanically works, Gothic is just not really present. So let me read it off here. Gothic horror is about the terror within, not without. It shatters the illusion of humanity in a poignant way of holding a mirror up to us and saying, look at what we truly are, and look at what we pretend to be. Under the mask of civility, there is depravity. Under the thin veneer of society, there is wickedness. Under all the trappings of sophistication, are we not all predators or prey? Gothic horror shatters the lies we trick ourselves into believing and shows that we, not some distant entity, are and ever shall be the architects of our doom. The quest for perfection leads us to discover our own imperfection. Our quest for the divine leads us to believe we ourselves are gods. These are the themes that haunt stories of Gothic horror. And what I'll say is, a lot of time in 5e, when we run these games, we're typically not looking inwardly. We're typically looking outwardly. We're typically looking at how our characters shape the world, not how the world shapes our characters. And I think that's an important distinction there. What I'll say is, 5e does dark fantasy pretty well. But Gothic horror, you have to really work on. Not just the DM, mind you, but also the players. Because I promise you, the DM could be a really good DM that runs Gothic horror well. But if you have one or two players in the party that basically kind of, you know, push back against it, then the theme just doesn't stick. So that's something to think about. What I will say, though, is if you're looking for Gothic, then for sure there is other game systems that fit that better. You know, off the top of my head, Call of Cthulhu, you can definitely lean in on a Gothic style of that versus a Lovecraftian. You could certainly look at that. I tried to run Prince of the Apocalypse for the first time DMing. It was a mistake. I will concur. What I will say is I've made several videos about like tier lists, and I do plan on making more tier lists because tier lists are always a fun time for everybody. Prince of the Apocalypse and me have a special relationship in that I don't like it, and yet at the same time, it's got such a great thing going on for it. I really want to like Prince of the Apocalypse, but every time I've ever touched the thing, it's just been jinxed every single time. What I will say is DMing it for the first time, not a good choice. When I get around to making a video guide series on it, though, maybe you can check that out and run it again. I think Gothic horror is a genre that just isn't that common these days. Maybe that's an issue. True. It absolutely is, because once again, the Gothic horror leans on reflecting upon ourselves, And the thing to consider is when Gothic horror was popular, there wasn't social media. you couldn't, scroll through and see what, everyone's getting up to. A lot of time back then, you were constantly reflecting upon yourself. And then, Gothic horror really accentuated that about discovering what the world truly is and how you fit into it. And nowadays, we've got so many things to distract us. Gothic horror just doesn't belong. If it was based on creepypasta horror, on the other hand, creepypasta, yeah. Creepypasta for sure. I think there is a reason why SCP has become popular in the recent years. I think some people want it. But the problem is that it is only some people. It's not for everybody. Horror games and horror games and people just don't go hand in hand. Right. I'm not too worried about spoilers since I was planning to run it after my Frostmaiden campaign. My buddy beat me to it. I would say it's always best to avoid spoilers whenever possible. It's always best to get that fresh experience right there, Tier lists are the best way to criticize No Fun for the things he enjoys in the world. Well, that's the thing is, I always know that I'm in the minority when it comes to certain aspects. For example being, when it comes to the modules, I'm not in agreement. I don't believe Curse of Strahd's the best module. I think Tomb of Annihilation is the best module. So right there, boom, a bunch of people are like, oh, Curse of Strahd's the best module. I'm like, TOA's actually got a bunch of good things going for it. When it comes to, the classes, I'm like, oh, Fighter's one of the best classes. And people are like, oh, no, that's stupid, et cetera, et cetera. So, my tier lists are always memed upon for being wrong, as it were. But whatever. Call of Cthulhu has an appendix with a bunch of conventional horror monsters, not to mention H.P. Lovecraft had plenty of stories that blurred the line between Lovecraftian horror and more conventional horror. Absolutely. Storm King's Thunder has been the module that is jinxed for me. Tried running it 3 times. All 3 fell apart. Yeah, that's a tough one. It's always tough to be like, oh man, I really want to run this because I really like the themes going on. I like this and I like that. And unfortunately, the truth of the matter is most groups fail. Much like how most relationships fail, most gaming group relationships fail. It is just the nature of, for example, being when it comes to a relationship, it's typically 1-on-1. If those have issues, try getting in a relationship with 4 or 5 other people at the same time. It's typically hard to make things work out because life gets in the way, scheduling conflicts, different wants, needs, and desires. Most gaming groups fail, and that's just a very, very unfortunate, sad truth to our hobby, is that, you can't expect every group to succeed and make it to the end. Speaking of Jinx, have you watched Arcane? No, I have not watched Arcane yet. I do plan on doing so because I heard it's the bee's knees, cat's pajamas, dog's woof. But I have not gotten around to doing it. I have been swamped with writing and recording and editing and a whole bunch of other things. But I think in the next maybe 2 weeks, I think I'll be able to catch up on some fun things. That is why TOA has such a great following, right? TOA's following is loyal. And it's not big, but it's loyal, is what I'll say. You can't win them all. Curse of Strahd, it's got such a great following because of the theme and the setting and, most important of all, the villain. TOA just, while I love the theme and the setting, the villain straight up isn't as lovable. So there's that going on for it. I think that people gave TOA a chance, then they could get really latched on to what it actually is. Better to have D&D'd and failed than to have ever D&D'd at all. I would say so. I would say it's much better to have played D&D than to have not played D&D. That being said, as mentioned before, though, bad D&D is bad. And I'm not talking about bad as in it was it's kind of boring. I'm talking about bad as in it made you cringe bad. Like, bad D&D is not good. So avoid that at all costs. Others have said the same, but I found you through Curse of Strahd guides and have used you for Candlekeep as well. Thank you for all you do, the D&D community. Thank you so very much. It was no surprise to me that my Curse of Strahd guide series did better than some of the other ones because, a lot of people have gotten to Curse of Strahd. And something important to note about the Curse of Strahd guide series was I looked around at the other people who did guide series for Curse of Strahd. There was one person who put out like a 3-hour video that had like 250,000 views. And I'm like, oh my god, that's like insane. And then I looked at it, and then unfortunately the person who did that, they only made one other video after that, and then just stopped. They didn't cover the full module, but they basically they got this huge amount of views, and unfortunately just like didn't do anything else with it. And then when it came to the other people making module guides on Curse of Strahd, I think basically everyone's approach to it was, hey, this place sucks, I'm going to sell you my product. And, or maybe they don't say it sucks, but they're like, hey, instead of doing it this way, do it my way. And that's where my guide series come in, because I'm not trying to sell you something because I don't have anything to sell, unfortunately. I'm going at it more like a rules as written approach, and more importantly, I'm going at it at a simple approach, because I think, if you want the complexity, you're going to do it yourself. But there's a lot of people that don't want the complexity, and there's a lot of people that are new, So I think it's very important for me to cater to new DMs to the hobby. I do agree. TOA is my personal favorite. Was the Coast module. While Beyond the Witchlight has quickly propelled itself into that running for me as a close favorite. Out of the Abyss is also really good. Absolutely. I will say. So what I'll say is, when it comes to the 5e modules, there is a clear distinction between the modules that lean into 5e's game mechanics, and unfortunately, there is modules that go against 5e's mechanics. And what do I mean by that? Take, for example, unfortunately, my favorite one, Tomb of Annihilation. So Tomb of Annihilation has a hex crawl, where 1 hex equals 1 day's worth of travel. And what happens is you get into encounters, and then you go on to the next hex. Now, purely as written, what that means is you get into these encounters, but unfortunately, you just sleep it off and you just keep on going. The idea behind hex crawls back in the day was that you were constantly draining resources. And yes, that can still be theoretically present in TOA if you work it hard enough, if you want to change some things up. But quite frankly, 5e has gotten rid of a lot of survival mechanics because you can simply wave your hand and you can have a little hut. You can wave your hand and produce food and water. You can sleep everything off, and the survival mechanics are now pretty much no longer existent in 5e. So unfortunately, TOA, in a sense, goes against 5e's mechanics. But then take, for example, Wild Beyond the Witchlight. Wild Beyond the Witchlight goes with 5e's mechanics. It works alongside and in tandem with the rules, in that it provides mechanical implications, in that it rewards going into combat if you do this way. It rewards you exploring. It rewards you socializing. It gives you skill checks and prompts. It does these things that actually accentuate the game rules. And I could go down the very, very long list of all the 5e modules on, if they go for or against the mechanics in some degree. But at the end of the day, some of these adventures work well with 5e's mechanics, and some of them don't work well with 5e's mechanics. 'Twas fun listening to the stream from the shadows, but I just failed my stealth check and now have to go to school Xmas program. Thanks, mate. Thank you, Helga. I feel like once I complete Rhyme, I'll be able to run anything. Running Rhyme is 80% homebrew to begin with. Still a top-tier module in my opinion. What I'll say is, Rhyme of the Frost Maiden is an excellent skeleton. It's got such a great theme going on. the frigid north, terrible darkness, pervasive, god running around, a whole bunch of evil minions running around the joint. I love Rime of the Frost Maiden's tone and feel. But once again, the module itself didn't live up to the expectations. And unfortunately, a lot of people have to take it into their own hands. But I do love Rime of the Frost Maiden. But I do agree that absolutely, purely as written, not a good module. Which do you prefer for combat, a hexagonal map or a square map? So, I personally like hexes because it basically gets rid of a lot of the context of how do you move appropriately. But unfortunately, none of the 5e modules have ever been made with hex battle maps in mind. Every single one of them is made for square. And something important to note, people, is, you might not think about this, but when you are on a square grid, battle map, you need to take into consideration diagonal movement. Because it's actually very important it's very easy to forget that diagonally moving actually makes you move further than if you were moving in a straight line. So what you're supposed to do is, for every other square, every 5 feet that you go in a diagonal, it takes an additional 5 feet. And that's to help it. I've seen a lot of people who simply forget about that, and sometimes players, basically figure out that if they move it diagonally, then they can move further, depending on the situation at hand. I think hexagonal. I say that's so weird. Hexagonal. Hexagonal. I think hexagonal maps are really fun, but what I will say is, for battle maps, I've really only seen hexagonal work for game systems that really lean into the hex versus leaning into the square. Something for me is there's like a mech game that uses hexes. Lancer. I blanked on the name. Lancer uses hexes, and it makes sense for Lancer. That would be a cool video ranking all the 5e modules first to last. I have, in fact, ranked all of the 5e modules. I have already done that one, but maybe I'll revisit that in the future because we're getting a bunch of books. I think the collection of modules are the better adventure books in D&D. Haven't looked too much into Candlekeep or Strixhaven, but Tales from the Yawning Portal and Ghost of Saltmarsh are great. So, what I loved about Tales from the Yawning Portal and Ghost of Saltmarsh is they're just straight up blast from the past. Tales from the Yawning Portal and Ghost of Saltmarsh are both excellent top-tier modules from days of old. And in fact, one of them, being I6 Ravenloft here, I6 Ravenloft was so freaking good, they tacked a whole campaign onto it, But yeah, so basically, they just 5E'd up, all these old school modules, and it worked well. And Wizards of the Coast recognizes that these anthology books are doing really good, and they said that they are going to be making more anthologies for 5th edition. So, stay tuned for that. Theater of the Mind, I think outside of Boxagon. So I personally like Theater of the Mind because when it comes to Theater of the Mind, I allow my players to get away with a lot more crazy shenanigans, and I can just introduce more crazy shenanigans. But there is the truth of the matter is, there are some people who just straight up cannot do Theater of the Mind. There are people who straight up cannot comprehend the dynamics of what's going on. There are people that, either get easily distracted or can't remember or do whatever, and they have to constantly ask questions. And asking too many questions basically just interrupts the flow of Theater of the Mind. So I would say, whenever you can, absolutely do Theater of the Mind. But if you can't, then no shame in busting out the box. Break the mold, go isometric. I personally think isometric is awesome, but unfortunately, there isn't really any virtual tabletops that support isometric. I don't believe. I know you can theoretically do an isometric if you just have it a free grid, I guess, but I think isometric is a really, really cool way of looking at an area. I need to watch more of No Fun Allowed then. LOL, I haven't seen the ranking video. I promise I'll watch all the vids, but you have to watch Arcane so I can geek out in your Discord with you. Fair enough. I have, on my channel, I've got playlists to everything. In fact, I've got a ton of playlists. Let me take a look here. What playlist do I even have? I've got playlist on... Tomb of Annihilation, Rime of the Frostmaiden, Curse of Strahd, Module Podcast. I did a Roll for Stats podcast a while ago, but that kind of fell flat because not many people were listening to it. Villains Voiced, How to GM, Tomb of Annihilation Chronicles, where I talked about my game. Interview series, a Waterdeep Dragon Heist, Candle Key Mysteries, What Is This System series, one-off videos, basic and expert quiz, but unfortunately the quizzes just take way too damn long. The Quick DM Advice series, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, the Tier List series, DM Roundtable, and now D&D books in 1 minute. So I've got a lot of playlists going on. So if you got something you want to watch, check that out. I encourage it. I've got a lot going on for my channel. I've got a lot of things going on. Don't you worry. I was trying to say, one thing that's an issue with YouTube is I wish there was a pretty way to sort videos. I know you can sort your videos based on the playlist. I know that, but when it comes to releasing videos, if you release a video once a week, like all the other D&D YouTubers do, then it looks pretty. But me personally, I release a bunch of different videos all the time. And unfortunately, it just, it uglifies up the channel. And it becomes harder to find obscure things. So I'll have to work on presenting my playlist in a way, make sure that everyone can see it. I'll have to work on that. I've got a lot of things to work on. if you guys couldn't tell. I've been working on quite a lot. I'm working on the No Fun's Guide to Everything. I'm working on shorts. I'm going to be running adventures. I'm going to be doing a bunch of things. Oh, man. Any other burning questions? Does anyone have anything fun to share or ask about and see what's going on? Figure out what the hip apps is. I'm all ears right now. When are you growing out your hair? The data is there. Luscious locks are key to the success in the D&D community. So I mean, I'm not gonna lie, that's true. Every successful D&D YouTuber does have hair. Every successful one. So statistically, that makes sense. The unfortunate nature of the fact is my hair is not the greatest grown out. And in fact, as my hair is right now, this is like the longest it's been in maybe years. I had +1 the locks. I just, the unfortunate thing is I've got a really terrible hairline up front. I don't know if y'all can tell, but basically I've got like a widow's peak but my hair also creeps up to here. So I've got these like weird wave things going on in the front. And, I'm not self-conscious about it, but I know that it's definitely not the prettiest hairline around. I usually just shave, so I'm usually just bald anyway. Tria Monk. Well, okay. So when I say successful, let me rephrase that. There's a bunch of D&D YouTubers that are successful. What I'll say is, point to me any D&D YouTuber that has 100K subs or more. What do they all have in common? They all have hair. Boom. Except for, I think there was Waz D20, but he doesn't make videos anymore, so... All the current people that make videos that have over 100K subs, they all have hair. So it's obviously the hair, nothing else. Literally, that's the only reason that they've got 100K subs. Also, no one pointed out that shirt is awesome. My little Not Grogu, the Baby Yoda shirt. This one's pretty cute. I got this for Christmas last year, I believe. Thank you. It was a delightful shirt. My after-school D&D program just started at my school that I run, and I'm actually trying to get my school district to allow me to pilot a program teaching literature using D&D in class. So it's been talked to death, of course, but what I'll say is D&D is an absolutely fantastic way of learning so many things. You learn social skills, you learn problem solving, you learn math, you learn, reading, you learn a bunch of various things. And there's been studies on it that D&D is helpful. Mind you, D&D, I just mean like tabletop role-playing game in general. D&D teaches you so many things. It's super helpful. It's great for development. It's good overall. So I absolutely, if you can find these studies and show them off to your district and show the results, and you get kids to talk about how cool it is, not just for the fact that they get to beat up monsters, but for how cool it is that they get to learn and do these things. If you show them that and they say no, then screw them, do it anyway, is what I would say. That's what I would say. Yeah, absolutely. D&D is absolutely great for learning a ton of things. Literature, math, science, social skills, whatever. Problem solving, bunch of things. Let the community judge. Show us the pics. Crib Crab has no hair. He's a crab. You're not wrong. You're not wrong. If you had to run a single campaign module to level 20, which one would you run and why? I would run Tomb of Annihilation to level 20. Because one thing I love about level 20 campaigns is that you break it down by tier. I know if you look at all of the 5e modules, you basically just arbitrarily level up over time. It's like, oh yeah, because you overcame that challenge, you're now, this level. But the thing to consider is the difference between a level 4 character and a level 5 character is night and day. The difference between a level 10 and a level 11 character is night and day. And it's very important to make those distinctions, that these characters are transcending what they actually are able to accomplish, how they affect the world and all the things around them. It's important to discuss these things because it should be clear and present. A level 1 to 4 character is a nobody. Air quote nobody, right? They can't do much. They're not going up against that many things. But a level 5 to a 10 character, they're punching up. They're getting up there in the world. Then all of a sudden you go from level 11 to 16? 11 to 16. Then you're affecting humongous swaths of area. You're going up against the near deadliest of foes. And then finally at the 17th to 20th, you are straight up affecting the world. And Tomb of Annihilation has a great way to balance that out. At level 1 to 4, you're just nobody's hacking their way through the jungle. And then you could bump it up to be once you're 5 to 10, then you're massing forth armies and making garrisons. And then at level 11 through 16, then you are duking it out against these major power factions. And then at level 17 through 20, you're going up against the gods. I think that's a great way to go about it. I was using voice to text there. There's some typos, but yes, I'm a teacher and I'm trying to do it special because my school district specializes in students with autism. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I certainly agree that that running D&D is a great way to teach people a number of things for a number of different reasons, and whether that be because they are autistic or have some learning or whatever. I think that's great. Fun fact: my brother's autistic, so I totally get with the program. What is your favorite 5e monster of all time and why? My favorite 5e monster of all time and why is probably the Beholder, because the Beholder is so alien, it's so unique, It's so deadly. It's so, just strange. It doesn't belong. And that's what I love about it, is that it belongs because it doesn't belong. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just one of these things that I'm sure the first time it ever got introduced ever in a game, 50 years ago, people were like, "Oh, that's totally awesome." Fun fact, when the Beholder was introduced, you measured the eye distance in inches, because in the early days in D&D, you measured everything out in inches. I remember looking at the Beholder stat block a little while ago, and it was very interesting to see the changes the Beholder's overcome. And the fun fact about the Beholder is you're not beholden. You're not beholden to using the same 10 rays. What I would strongly suggest is, if you've ran a Beholder for your party already, then change out the eye stocks. Have them do different effects. Have them do different spells, different abilities, do different things. There's a lot of fun you can have changing up Beholders to do various different effects. So yeah, probably Beholder is probably one of my most favorite. Although my most favorite 5e monster of all time is... No, it's probably Beholder. Probably Beholder. How long have I been going for? I started at 2:30, so I've been going for 2 hours. I will go for another 15 minutes to give my voice time to rest, because I've been talking nonstop. I've been jib-jabbering this whole time. So 15 minutes. If anybody has any dying questions or anything of that nature, feel free to hit me up about that. As mentioned before, join the Discord. I'm going to be making a whole bunch of announcements there. I'm going to be making that place a lot more active. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of other fun, various things. I'm going to be doing a whole bunch for the community, putting out different stuff. I'm going to be doing all of the magazine stuff, so check that out. I'm going to be doing a bunch of things. What's your best Nat 1 story? Best Nat 1 story? Man, I've got a lot. I don't know if this is best, because this kind of sounds kind of mean, but one time my players were getting into a fight, and someone had advantage on a roll, and they basically the TLDR was they were on a beam over lava, and they just got hit, and I said, hey, make a dexterity saving throw or you fall in the lava. They rolled 2 natural ones, even though they had advantage, and then they had lucky. So they essentially had a third roll. That third roll was a 1. So he rolled 3 ones in a row, and fell in the lava. So that was pretty gnarly. Very unlucky. It's funny because we made that joke because his character had lucky, but it was notorious that his lucky rolls were always garbage. Sad to say. Sometimes lucky, I see a lot of people complain about lucky being strong, but in my experience, lucky has not been as damaging to the game. I'm trying to create a dungeon, and the party has to visit different points as they level. Do you have any recommendations on modules that do this sort of multi-adventure, single dungeon delving well? So, one, yes, that was insane odds. I believe it's a 1 in 1,600 chance. Which, when you say it out loud, a 1 in 1,600 chance doesn't sound that bad. But I mean, it's still pretty bad. Is it 1 in 16? It's 1 in 4. Yeah, it's 1 in 1,600. But I mean, it doesn't sound that bad, but it's still pretty bad. But what I would say is, so you're looking for a dungeon that they have to revisit several points. Any recommendations on modules that do this sort of multi-adventure, single dungeon delving well? What I will say is, something I didn't mention, and I mentioned this in my last live stream, is I'm actually working on a mega dungeon where you have to regularly go back to town. But I think what you're looking for in particular is more of like a Metroid sort of dungeon delving experience. You're looking for a Metroidvania style approach where, You go in the dungeon, maybe you pass by some things, then you keep on going back. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, is there any products like that? What I'll tell you straight up is there is no product like that for 5th edition, right? I mean, official anyway. There's no Wizards of the Coast product like that. But I'm trying to think, has there been any like old school modules that do that? Has there been any third-party products that do something like that? What I'll say is, so it sounds like you're looking for a mega dungeon, and off the top of my head, there is some great, and I mean fan-freaking-tastic, good old mega dungeons by Greg Gillespie. He's done Barrel Maze, High Fell, and Caverns of Archaea. If you look up those, look up Barrel Maze, and it'll be the first thing that pops up. I promise you. That one's a mega dungeon where it's just a single floor dungeon. But what's really cool about this mega dungeon is you have several ways to go inside of it, and depending on where you go, there's different like factions that control different areas. As mentioned before, I am working on a mega dungeon as well, and in fact, I'll give you guys a little bit of a teaser here. So I'm working on a mega dungeon that is part hex crawl and part mega dungeon. Is that coming in? I gotta wait like a few seconds to see if it actually comes in well. But check me out. Check my product out when it comes out. Basically, the concept of a mega dungeon from days of old was that you have your starting town, you go out, you do adventuring, and then you come back. The reason why you had to come back is because the dungeon is trying to kill you. In old school D&D, you didn't simply just take a little nap and then get all your health back. No. Your health back you only got like 1, 2, or 3 health back in the day. So you physically had to go back or else you were just straight up going to die over time due to the attrition. What I'll say is, to reintroduce dungeon delving mechanics into 5th edition, you are going to have to change up the rest variants. And what I'll say is, if you're looking for rest variants, then once again, come look at my product. I'm going to be introducing different rest variants. And I will also be having a full issue on dungeon delving and introducing new dungeon delving mechanics. So stay tuned to that. I had a tough time deciding which campaign module I would run for my students that would be okay with kids. Ultimately decided the Carnival because of the new shiny and because the whole campaign. I would absolutely say Wild Beyond the Witchlight is easily one of the best kid-friendly adventures, because one thing I always do whenever I'm running for kids is you have to change up the theme of the game. Like, flat out, when I'm running for kids, like, they're not killing anything. They're either going up against undead, and that's fine. They blow up the skeleton. Doesn't matter. But if they're going against people, then it's flat out, they're knocking out the bad guy, or they beat him up and then the bad guy surrenders. Wild Beyond the Witchlight has a great theme of that going on, where you can easily have it where they're just beating up the enemy, or or you're going against an enemy that it's okay for them to die because it's not, uber violent or whatever. Have you played the Ravenloft video game? Is it good? I have not played the Ravenloft video game. I cannot say. Is supposed to be able to finish without relying on combat. Yes. You can easily run this game without any combat. In fact, my game that I'm running, my group has only gotten to combat twice. So, if this was a traditional campaign, there would be combats like every other time. But my group is about to finish the campaign, and we've only gotten into 2 combats, and I think that at most we're going to have 3 throughout the whole thing. But you can easily just strip out all the combat and just say, hey, instead of, beating them up, instead you talk them down, or maybe like someone, MacGuffin shows up or whatever. Easy peasy. I'm fine looking at other products as well. I hadn't connected it to Metroid, so that's helpful too. Yes, so I should also, I'll go ahead and there's a great video by one of my fellow YouTube compatriots here. D&D Metroid. Does this pop up? Here we go. Super Metroid Mega Dungeons. I'll post the video in the chat here. If I can. Can I? Is it possible? Yeah, look at that. That is a video linking to one of my compatriots there. Basically, he talks about D&D, designing a Mega Dungeon like Super Metroid, which makes sense. What's the Discord? The Discord is my Discord. I believe you can find it in the doobly-doo down below. I believe, right? Yeah, on the info for this one, if you join my Discord, it'll be there. Yeah, so join that Discord. I'll be, like I said, I'm gonna be making a bunch of announcements, a whole bunch of fun jazz there. Nice, yeah, nice. Will do. What's the Discord? Thanks, I see it. Perfect. Yeah, so watch that video. Totally awesome. Great way to think about how to basically the idea with a Mega Dungeon is you can't make it boring. I see a lot of people when they come up with the concept of a Mega Dungeon, they're like, yeah, I'm going to have like 197 rooms here, and this room's going to have this thing, and this room's going to have... The unfortunate nature is, much like how most groups fail to complete a campaign, most groups are going to fail to complete a Mega Dungeon. Make a Mega Dungeon that's manageable, and make it loop back on itself. Make it worthwhile exploring, and make it worthwhile returning to areas and destinations. We've gotten into 4 combat encounters so far, just finished Hither. They have worked their way around combat in multiple instances, though, and one of the combat encounters really ended with diplomacy, so really that's just 3. Yeah, I think, as mentioned before, Wild Beyond the Witchlight is easily one of the best kid-friendly modules around. Just due to the nature of the theme, due to the enemies, due to the, what they're doing. Just a good time. I would not want to run kids through, some of these other modules. Like, I'm looking around here. I mean, there's no way I'm running Descent to Avernus for kids. I don't want to get involved with the intricacies of hell and, making deals with a bunch of kids. It sounds terrible. My group is also totally bring all the NPCs along. Every single NPC they have found in Prismere so far is a now follower. I wholeheartedly agree. Followers need to make a return to D&D play. Back in the day, and we'll be seeing this when I'm running I6 Ravenloft, back in the day, you used to have an army by your side. It wasn't just the 4 awesome badass PCs. It was the 4 awesome badass PCs plus anywhere between 3 to 7 retainers per each person. So you'd walk around with a huge little posse. In fact, if you actually look at what's the book called? Art and Arcana. Art and Arcana has a character sheet from the first ever ran Tomb of Horrors. And if you looked at that now, especially if you show this to a new person, they'd gawk. Because on that character sheet, it details out how there was 200 people in the party. That was reasonable back then. Having 200 people in the party made sense. It made sense that you'd have the wandering troop. You'd have all of your retainers. You'd have all of the armor bearers, the torch bearers, the cooks, the chefs, the entertainers, the wagon people. You'd have all these various people, and it made sense. But nowadays, we've sadly stripped down to just, and we go down from like this epic, heroism of like having these large swaths of armies to now this epic heroism of, it's just 4 people against the elements. And it's just always somehow 4 people that are always going up against these crazy wackadoo situations to save the world or whatever. It makes, I see a lot of people use the term realism in their games. And realism and D&D just straight up don't mix. It doesn't make sense. But what I'll say is, on a realistic standpoint, it makes far much more sense that there would be a large group of people walking together versus a very small group of people walking together. It makes a lot more sense that it would be, the 4 heroes who've hired out a bunch of porters and guides and mercenaries walking around the wilderness versus just 4 people hoping that they don't get, attacked by a massive army or a crazy wacky monster or whatever. It just makes sense that there'd be a huge group of people. And speaking of that, in my first issue here, I do have an NPC morale system and hiring system rules. So, once again, check that out when it comes out in January. More details will be coming out later on. Alrighty, one last minute. Any last questions? If you submit a question in the next minute, I will answer it. Who's your favorite NPC in Wild Beyond the Witchlight so far? Oof, that's tough. There's a lot of good ones. Oh, God dang, that's tough. There's a lot of good ones in there. I like Amador. I like Squirt. I like Mudlump. Mudlump's a really fun one. I like yeah, that's tough. That's really tough. I don't know if I can pick a favorite. I don't know. Jingle Jangle. Jingle Jangle's a good one. Jingle Jangle is a good one. Alrighty. Speak now or forever hold your pieces. It's always a fun fact of whenever you're streaming, you always get lurkers. People love to lurk. That's fine. Lurkers are doing their job. They're bumping those numbers up, and that's all that matters. So this goes out to you, lurkers. You don't need to say anything. You're doing your job. Alrighty, I think that is going to do it for me then. I've been going for 2.5 hours, and I think that is a good place to stop. So, just covered all the various things. Strixhaven coming out tomorrow. I'll be doing a bunch of fun stuff about that. Join my Discord. I'm going to be running a bunch of games, including One Night Strahd, and Strahd by Saturday night. Beginning a whole bunch of shorts and doing a whole bunch of good old fashioned zine stuff. Thanks for streaming and just being awesome. Thank you for watching the stream, and thank you for being awesome. Thanks for the advice. Super helpful as always. Thank you. I am always here to help. And if you ever, you can always just add me in the Discords and do whatever. I'm always, the best way to always reach me is just adding me in a public Discord, so I always find it. Join my Discord if you haven't already. I'm going to be posting a bunch of fun stuff there. You can find it in the link down below. Thank you for all watching. Thank you all for listening. You all are incredibly awesome. Thank you so very much. And thank you to my amazing patrons who keep the lights on around here. Thank you for the people that donated to me today. That was absolutely fan-freaking-tastic. Thank you so very much. And I'll see you all in the next one. See ya.